Welcome to the Klazar podcast, everyone. It is here where we talk about modern GTM motions that are transforming the sales and partnerships across SaaS businesses by talking to leaders and experts who have scaled their cloud alliances and taking a leaf out of their own growth playbook and discussing the trends that are defining the future of SaaS sales and partnerships. Today, we have one such leader with us. She's been fantastic leader in the industry for a long time and someone that we've been trying to get on the podcast for a while. Welcome, Neeti.
Thank you, Turnar.
Welcome, Neeti, again. And Neeti, just so for our audience, I'm just going to give them a little bit of a background, and it's a illustrious career that you've had. Neeti, you're the founder and CEO of AI Partnerships Consultancy, which helps businesses leverage the opportunity of AI for innovation and growth through strategic partnerships and all of the tooling that is needed. Committed to continuous learning, Neeti, you're also a doctoral candidate at the University of Cambridge in the UK, which I would love to know a little bit more about in just a bit. And previously, you've led the Microsoft partnership at VMware, and under your leadership, VMware, which now has become Broadcom, launched its marketplace motion on the Azure cloud marketplace and was contributing to a triple-digit million-dollar revenue of the business. In fact, in 2022, the largest deal that was made through Azure marketplace was VMware. And last but not the least, CRN has already called you one of the most powerful women in the channel space. Neeti, how does it feel to be, being in the partnership space and having all these accolades to your name?
I'm really excited. I think I fell into partnerships like most of us because nobody goes to school for partnerships. And it is a craft that I really enjoy, and it's a craft that I have gotten really good at. And, sometimes you know the craft, but you don't have the opportunity. And I feel incredibly honored that I had not only the craft to practice that I really enjoyed, but also the opportunities at these big tech companies, which are becoming really, really powerful at this point, where I could practice that craft that I loved so much. So yeah, I think it is a combination of both those skills and the opportunities.
That's awesome. And big tech companies is what we love to talk about in this podcast. So we know we'll definitely dig deeper into that. So if I want to jump straight into it, VMware did not have a marketplace presence before you joined. What were the first few things that you did there? And just so you know, I ask this question to every single guest that's on the podcast because it's really critical to start on the right foot. So if you can share your perspective on what were the few things that you did, that'll be really useful for the audience.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'll tell you the story as it unfolded. I got hired by really two great leaders at VMware who were leading overall partnerships charter. And when I came on board as part of my 30, 60, 90-day plan, I did my due diligence, talked to different stakeholders, tried to understand what the gaps in the opportunities in the partnership that we had with Microsoft that I was brought in to lead were, so that we can then systematically go and focus on things that were priority. And as you know, in 2021, Microsoft's key metric of success with their partners was marketplace. And when I looked at what was happening at VMware, we had different product divisions, but we didn't have a marketplace presence with this tech leader, Microsoft. And since when you know that it's a priority for the big tech leader, and you are a key partner in their ecosystem, and at that point, we were one of the key ISVs that was working closely with Microsoft. So we wanted to make sure that we had a play in a strategic lever that we could look at. But that also meant educating across the different disciplines. That also meant understanding if we could execute on the marketplace internally. And then also it meant figuring out how we would go to market, since this would be a new route to market for us.
Mm,
So I think the first thing was to understand the challenges and then create a business plan that you, or a business case that you can then go back internally and sell internally, because that was the first hurdle that I had to and so creating a strategy plan is, and getting buy-in is the first step, and that required going across multiple product lines and the leaders on all the functional domains. So that was one thing that I learned quickly, is that VMware did have that consensus building culture, and there was a programmatic model of where we would go pitch those ideas with different VPs, but they had to be aligned and they had to sign off. And
Mm,
so that was one. So that basically, I had to make the case why marketplace and why now and why VMware
mm.
with Microsoft. So and I had support from Microsoft to kind of give me some of the stats, the numbers, to share, and then I also did my through the partnerships community to learn how our competitors were also participating in marketplace and what kind of revenue they were driving through marketplace. So that's always a good information to have, although I didn't, I just knew it through the community, not something that I could actually proactively go and research on. And that kind of gave us a case that there is an opportunity, these products are selling. We looked at the marketplace as well and made that case. In parallel, we also had to figure out operationally how would we handle either the public offer or the private offer. And then where we landed was that at this point we are not ready to go do public offers, so we will go through private offers, because we were selling into the enterprise customers where the private offers made more sense. So that combination of building the business case, getting the internal buy-in, doing some due diligence internally on operationally how it would work, and where we would have duct tape and where we would need to actually kind of really make the investment internally. So
Got it.
I,
And before we, sorry to cut you off, Neeti, but like before we go, there's lots of things to unpack there, right? I actually wanted to ask you a follow-up question where, you talked about how you aligned all of your peers, all of the VPs, and get a buy-in, right? That's where one of the key pieces of struggles I see in the industry right now, where the partnership community knows that this is a valuable channel to start exploring, but the gap is between them and many times the leadership team, where the leadership team immediately wants ROI calculations. Tell me in month 1 2 3 up until month 6 what am I going to get, right? So but sounds like you found a mechanism or a playbook of taking some of the data and some of the metrics to the leadership and to your peers, and bringing them along to the through the ride, right?
yeah.
Could you share a little bit about what those metrics were, what some of those conversations were, and how you handled them?
Yeah, so going back to 2021, VMware was at that place where revenue was the key metric for the business, and that's what
Mm,
they expected us to bring to the table as well.
mm,
So working backwards from where what the key metric was and what our customers were asking for, we were
mm,
able to then, based on the data that Microsoft provided on the numbers of the reach that marketplace had, the number of customers, the enterprise customers who were engaged with Microsoft on marketplace, that helped us then create a back of the envelope business case where we did do some modeling on what we could bring in from a revenue perspective, and we laid out our assumptions, and we laid out our and we built out that business case for the opportunity from a revenue perspective that we had. And the other thing that also helped was that customers had started to come to our sales team saying, hey, I have Mac credit,
mm.
so which is Microsoft Azure consumption credit to burn, while I don't have budget to buy VMware solution. I can use my Mac credit towards that. And I think that incentive that Microsoft has put in the market also helped us drive internally the conversation, is like, look, we have customer demand, customers budgets are getting thin, and 2021 after COVID was that year where uh, uh, optimization was the key thing that customers were talking about from their budgets perspective as well. um, And so we kind of dovetailed on that opportunity as we built the business case and said, look, we have new budget available through this mechanism, um, and here's the opportunity size based on the business case
Mm,
we developed. And so we actually made the connection to the KPI that mattered.
mm,
So it wasn't just like hand wavy and hey, and also as we had to go talk to different stakeholders, we aligned with what their objectives were. So there was work
mm,
behind the scenes that I did upfront as I was doing my initial, hey, I'm new, I have been chartered to lead the Microsoft partnership for VMware. I would like to learn what your metrics are. And then, click down from the revenue metric. We also aligned to what the different metrics for these key stakeholders internally were there. And it was legwork. It wasn't that one day I woke up and just went and presented my business case. I did the homework that is required to build out that business case that makes sense for the stakeholders as well. And then, fortunately, I was working for a leader who had been at VMware for a few more years than I was. And I also used my influence skills to align with him and ask him to make some calls before I went and presented the business case. So I mean, you do all the work that is required to get that buy-in, and by understanding what your stakeholders want, aligning with their charters, and making a higher KPI connection and revenue. In this case, it was revenue. In other cases, it can be customers, because depending on where your business is at, you may want to align to the KPI that matters.
got it. That makes sense. And it sounds like revenue was the key metric that you picked that made sense. And then, did you only have to align like a head of sales or somebody in sales and CRO and finance, or was there other people as well?
Both. Um, uh, the good thing was that we did this alignment early on, so that was the people that I had to align, or the functional groups that I had, was from product, and we had
Mm,
several
mm,
product teams, right? We had to align sales, we had to align customer success, operations. We had to align marketing, because marketplace also requires marketing teams to get involved. So it was truly end to end. It wasn't just in a finance, of course, because there's a business model and a business case that needs to be verified. So yeah, so it was working across the cross functional group and working at the leadership thing, which was great for me because I joined and I got exposure immediately into, and it was a do or die, right? If that business case didn't make sense, I would have it would have impacted my reputation. And since I put in the work and people could see that it made sense and this is a new route to market, and we do need to invest in it to get additional revenue streams, and this could be one of them. So there was interest. And what was also helpful is that the team that was working with Amazon on AWS had a
mm,
little few years ahead of me, so they had
mm,
also proven success. So I did bring in a few leaders and also some of the product leaders to back me up in that business case pitch that I did. So I didn't go alone, and I think that's another trick: is you get some of you understand where the power lies in the organization. You align with the leaders in that structure. So in VMware, it was product. So I
mm,
aligned with one of the product teams and I brought in some of the product leaders to say, look, we need this. We need to get this product that we are working with Microsoft, and route to market has to be marketplace, right? So we kind of told that
mm,
story as well internally. So I know there's a lot to unpack, but there's a lot that you need to do. But it is not that difficult. It just requires a little bit of systematic thinking and a system level thinking of, you know, how organizations move, what the organization culture is, what kind of approvals do you need, and what kind of business case do you need to build so that you can navigate and bring your stakeholders along. So it's education. And if a stakeholder is saying, well, we don't want to do this, is because they really have a problem on their side. So it's not they don't want to align with partnerships. It's just that they have a problem that they can't solve for, and you have to figure out how to solve for that. For example, as we were negotiating the marketplace contract, one of the
Mm,
problems we ran into was on the ops side, and we really had to spend time thinking through how we would do that, right? Because it was a new muscle that
mm.
we had to exercise, and we had to figure that out. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
and they were
Yeah, and
on
then
the pricing side, and we had to figure that out. So I think the key message here is, uh, it can be done. It needs
mm,
rigor and it requires discipline. And if you can bring that
mm.
to the table, you can get your stakeholders on board, and that's what we did.
Yeah, so Nidhi, like there's, as you said, there's a lot to unpack here. But what one piece that is different, what I'm hearing from you, is the product alignment. Because the majority of the time when I speak to the community, what I hear is, okay, I need to go talk to the sales team, sometimes marketing, definitely the CRO, and definitely finance and the ops team, right? But walk us through, like, why was the product team so motivated to help you, push for this route to market via marketplaces, and what kind of motivations, what kind of metrics were they interested in?
Yeah, so product was one of the product team was motivated because they had their own relationship with Microsoft as well on the product side,
Mm,
and
mm,
they were going to market with Microsoft, by selling this first kind of SaaS solution that they had built with Microsoft. And one of the key uh, feedback they had received from Microsoft was that in order to drive consumption,
mm,
it would be best to align with the Mac as well. And I think they had been informed and educated enough from their product side as well, on the go to market, being a marketplace, that it made sense for them, right? And also, um, they were thinking of kind of billing it through the Azure portal as well, through the marketplace, right? So there was an underlying, um, I would say, integration that was already happening. And so they knew that marketplace, and we needed the marketplace agreement in order for us to use that go to market. So
mm.
I already had some alignment. Now it was a matter of getting the stakeholders' approval so that we can actually execute on the contract, because legal wouldn't sign off until finance and operations and all these other stakeholders, which makes sense if you do it upfront. Because if you don't, and some of the things that people are learning when they work with marketplaces is that if all these stakeholders are not aligned, then it starts creating issues operationally later when they go to market through marketplaces. So yeah, so we did that upfront.
Okay, that's awesome. And so I think what the key message is, like, there was already alignment between the product teams
But
within VMware with the teams inside Microsoft. And so the understanding of Mac and that alignment of drawing down on Mac was also, that must have
Yeah,
been a huge.
exactly. I think that was huge, but you don't find out till you go have those conversations, and then you say, okay,
Exactly.
now I'm going to align with you, because aligning with you as the product leader who is so invested in it already helps me get the goal. And I still remember at that time my boss and I would laugh, and he would say, he would say, I'll just let you go do this because I don't know if it's going to pan out, and you can decide if you want to invest your time on this or not. And I said, no, this will pan out, this is important, and we need to go do this, because we can't be not on marketplace while our competitors are in. So having that clear vision from the partnerships leader side, and having that tenacity to then pursue all the approvals, all the buy-ins, all the getting people educated at different levels, right? So we had to go educate the leaders, uh,
Mm,
but we also had to go educate the virtual team we had to form, who were going to actually go do the work once the agreement was signed. And then, of course, working with legal teams to make sure they understood what the Microsoft parlance and languages and the translation. In fact, Microsoft did so many education calls with us to explain different components of the marketplace agreement, because there was just, the legalese don't provide the clarity that the business team needs, so that translation needs to happen. So at that point, as a partnership leader, your role is to become a facilitator and an educator, um,
Hmm.
to make sure that you are helping the teams understand what they are getting themselves into, and it's education. The pushback is often because there is lack of understanding. And so, for example, with the tax team and the international tax team, I spent a lot of time because understanding how marketplaces are taxed. And when Microsoft becomes your billing agent, how that tax structure would fall and who's responsible varies by each country. So you can only imagine the conversations I had to have. And I'm not a tax specialist, so I learned a lot about tax during that process. But that is an important conversation to have, because without that buy-in, we couldn't go and sign the international agreement on marketplace, right? So
Hmm.
these are, I think, learnings from the trenches. You only learn all these things when you do the role and do the job. And I do think that once we got through this whole process, and it took us about 3 to 4 months, just kind of keeping at it and follow up every day. And once we did get the agreement done, obviously, Raghu was then our CEO, and
Hmm.
he announced it on stage at a key event with the customers, and everyone was excited about it. And I still remember I met him at one of the events, and he came and congratulated me, and I said, "You didn't think we would get this done?" And he said, "No, but you did get it done." So these are important things that you, as a partnership leader, there's always the opportunity to just give up and say we can't do
Hmm.
it, because it's just so much cross functional coordination, and up and down the chain, especially if you are part of a large organization. It's not like 5 people you have to convince.
Hmm.
It's often, I think that virtual team was about 100 people on both sides. So it wasn't just the VMware.
Wow.
It's not just VMware that I had to convince. There were people on the Microsoft side that I had to convince to make sure that what we were asking for, they would. And some of that, I had to call some old friends from Microsoft, and say, "Hey, can you help us, because we can't keep talking about it for next 5 months. This is important. Let's get this done." Yeah, so
Wow.
we got this done, and we got the agreement done. And then when one of the biggest deals came, I was the one then working with my team, writing, what is the key leaders at Microsoft going to say at their next event. Obviously we couldn't talk about the customer because the customer had not signed off using their name. But Microsoft could say, one of their ISVs has this large deal, and it was us. So yeah, so
Wow.
it's a good story. Um, it wasn't easy, I would say, but it can be done.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And like I want to move on to the next topic, but the last piece I really want to get inside of your head is the ops piece that you were just talking about, right? So product and marketing and sales and other pieces. So we've heard a lot about like sales alignment and marketing alignment and some of the other GTM alignment and also finance. But walk us through about like what was the conversation with the ops team and what were their concerns and how you found a champion on the product side. Was there somebody on the ops side as well?
Yeah, so the ops was complicated is because VMware had so many different tools that were being used
Hmm.
to book the deal, to track the deal, and then invoice the customer. Now, what we were changing was fundamentally that we are not invoicing the customer directly, right? We are going through Microsoft becoming the billing agent, which is what the
Hmm.
marketplace does. And there were different ways in which the products could be sold. So we had to make sure that, and it was also difficult because the different product teams had different tools, so that
Hmm.
the tools were not standardized for sales and customer success on the back end either. So what we ended up doing was what we used to call a blue works or blueprint of what that flow would look like. And that, I had some support from the ops team to do the documentation of what the flow would look like when the deal comes in through Azure Marketplace. And the customer says, okay, I would like to buy XYZ solution from VMware. Then how does that flow go from that to the private offer process on our end, where
Mm.
the deal is captured, acted upon, registered in our tools, the sales team know about it, the deal gets tracked and closed, and then it gets reported back, and we get billed through the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. So that whole flow, it looks simple, but it's not, especially if your backend tools are multiple and are designed, like Salesforce is designed to only take certain fields. That means we had to make some changes to our tools as well. So the first step was to document the flow. The
Mm.
second was to then estimate what changes we need to do and were they even possible in the timelines we were talking about, and then making sure that got executed or there was a workaround. And because you couldn't do, we couldn't do deal by deal. I mean, initially we could, one or first two deals or three deals, but when you cross 50 deals, it's impossible to scale
Mm.
across multiple businesses, across multiple sales teams, across different people touching that deal. So, so that is the work on the ops side that was needed. That from documentation to operationalizing it. Uh,
Got it. And then did you find like a champion internally? Like,
yeah.
did that organically come forward? How did that
I
process look
think that
like?
that was one thing that was the beauty of the VMware process, is that because
Mm.
we had gotten that buy-in initially, so we had champions on the operations team, who were aware of what we were doing. And
Mm.
so we had at the senior leadership level, and they had assigned people who would be, part of
Mm.
this V team who would then track it. Doesn't mean that
Mm.
they didn't have different questions, that they didn't have to work with different teams, but they became the quarterback for us. So it's not the partnerships team running around, because once you get to, as I said, about 100 people in the V team on both sides, then you can't be that quarterback. It has to be someone who understand how these tools work, how to build the bridge and this tool. So I was fortunate to have really good people who understood the back end and had been at VMware for a long time and became the quarterbacks for that piece. But they also had, what I had to do as a partnership leader is to make sure they had the blessings from their leadership teams to do that work.
Mm.
Because,
Mm.
we wanted to make sure that they got credit for all the work that was not part of the core ops business, but it was now an overlay because it was a new route to market that got introduced.
Got it. Got it. So like, looks like you first went at the top. You made a compelling argument to all the various leaders, got buy-in,
Yeah.
and then you started from that initial element. Then you started using that
Yeah.
as a function to motivate the rest of the organization to put their own time and weight behind this initiative.
But the even on to convince some of these leaders, we had to put in some initial work, right? So they
Hmm.
wouldn't get convinced if we went back and said, "Well, our due diligence shows that we can't even report anything that
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
billing to Microsoft," right?
Hmm.
And it was on both sides. It's not just VMware side; it's also on the Microsoft side, right?
Hmm.
They were, while we think that everything works, but it's not customized to each partner. So Microsoft has standardized processes, and we were asking for um, something that's different. Then Microsoft also had to figure out how they would do that on their end. So it was working on both sides of the aisle to figure out how this will all work together. Um, and for example, when Microsoft was piloting MPO, which now they have launched, which is their multi-party offer for marketplace, we didn't know at the time how our channel partners, and Microsoft had
Hmm.
not educated all the channel partners anyways, because that program was brand new. So we worked with the Microsoft product team on marketplace, and provided feedback. In fact, one of the really good leaders on my team who spent a lot of time in Redmond providing feedback on what our challenges were and how Microsoft MPO program needs to accommodate for partners like us. So there was a lot of back and forth with Microsoft as well on new solutions. So yeah, I mean, we wanted to sell services, but Microsoft didn't have an offer at the time
Mm.
to sell services. I mean, again, these are things that are just recently launched, and I do think that we were one of the vocal partners who provided feedback, which has helped shaped Microsoft Marketplace as well.
Mm, got it. And Neeti, in from a timeline perspective, from the literally the day that you started or you joined or you thought of taking this initiative up until the launch, like a rough timeline of how long it took.
So I think depends on what you call launch. So we had stages. The first thing was
Mm,
to getting the agreement done
mm,
in the US. The second stage was getting the agreement done in internationally. Then was making sure that the product teams were ready to place their solutions. So we had to ready if different product teams at different with varying rates. So obviously we had one partner from the product side that came on board early, or internal stakeholder. So we went to market with them, right? And then we had to onboard other solutions. And then, of course, you have to start the flywheel of, hey, we need to create more offers so that we can continue to grow the business.
got it. Got it. Okay. That's a great segue into the next section, which is now that we've launched it and things are, the initial hurdle is we are on the other side of it. What are some of the things that you did to keep the momentum going? And you just talked about, keeping the private offers going, but like, what are some of the things that you did systematically across the organization? If you can share a few of those.
Yeah, I think the co-launch itself required the marketing team to be involved with us, making
Mm,
sure that our offers were written in. We also had inherited a lot of marketplace offers from the companies that VMware had acquired. So we also had to do some cleanup on Azure Marketplace, on
mm,
removing some old offers from the pivotal days, for example, and that existed and were now tagged under VMware.
mm,
So I think the first piece was working with marketing and making sure that product marketing was involved. There was enablement of sales and making sure we were educating our sales teams on what this opportunity was, why should they care, right?
mm,
Because they were selling their solutions not through marketplace, and we wanted to make sure that they were aware of the mac opportunity, the new budget. And so telling that story and creating um, content for that, we had to make sure that our channel partners had some education and enablement. So we had to go convince our channel team to make sure that they understood what this opportunity was. And it was a back and forth, because this is not this requires education and an ongoing education. We aligned with other marketplaces teams that were at VMware selling through other hyperscaler marketplaces, to make sure that we had the deals were clean. There was no mixing of those deals at any point, and it was tagged as Microsoft or tagged as Amazon, and that was
mm,
required legally. And there was just work to be done to kind of keep that clean. Uh,
mm, mm,
so there was, after launching, it was making sure that we had some of this enablement work with across the teams as an ongoing sustained enablement, not once, because people, by 2022, we were also getting closer to the Broadcom merger, so we had to make sure that as people were churning, we were keeping that active. And
mm,
then also working with Microsoft to make sure when the new fiscal year started, we had asked for resources on the marketing side who could help us running campaigns, getting some funding to do more proactive demand gen, so that we could get more leads and into the system, making sure the deals that were in the system tagged at marketplace or Microsoft were getting closed, and then tracking all of that through the Microsoft co-sell motion that we had with them. And
mm,
at that time, Microsoft was also aligning the co-sell metric and the marketplace metric, and marketplace metric became the key metric. So we wanted to make sure that all the motions that we had around core sell, we were able to track all the marketplace deals and share those as wins as well. So there was a lot of the reporting stuff with Microsoft, which is part of how we tell the story of our success. But then there was also just internal, each cross-functional team engaged. Not that after we do the announcement and everyone runs away and nothing happens for the business, right? So, um, and obviously with Broadcom merger coming closer, there was also realignment of what it would mean to do marketplace in the new world. um, so I would kind of pause there and see if you had any other questions for me.
No, so that's fantastic. So Nidhi, like one other question in terms of the support that you've gotten or the championship that you've gotten, who would you say either internal or externally has been the biggest champion for you to get this initiative launched within VMware?
I think the product teams were definitely, the alignment with the product team leaders internally was really important. Um,
Mm,
it was also interesting that we got a lot of support from our legal and finance team as well on this, right? Once we made the business case, there was
mm,
it was an incentive to show, revenue generating um, route to market, and so we got a lot of support there as well. The other thing that it's not just the internal support, because it's partnership. We had a lot of support from Microsoft, and I do want to kind of make sure we spend some time to talk about that, is because without Microsoft support, we wouldn't be able to do that. We had a partner development manager assigned to us who really helped us navigate Microsoft. We also have the product team involved, and we had champions at Microsoft product teams who were really helping us also on the business side and the go-to-market side, to come as speakers, to be at our events, and bring us into Ignite, bring us into Build, like different, and making sure that doors were open internally for us to also engage.
mm,
We had great support from their leaders on not only this product side, but also on the business and the partnership side. So it was definitely a true partnership, and we weren't confused. Obviously Microsoft is trying to become a leader, is one of the leaders in cloud infrastructure space, and they wanted more of the on-prem business on their platform. So it wasn't lost on us that that was what was driving and was the motivation for them. But at every level, we did get the support we needed to make sure that Microsoft showed up as a true partner to help us grow revenue. And
mm,
when there were issues on their side, not only the relationship that I had helped, but also, we found different parts of the organization leaning in to support key ISVs. And I think that's the beauty of the Microsoft partner centric model, which I do think that everyone can learn from. Is, while there is competition, they compete, but they also lean in, and try to do the right thing for the partner as well. It's upon the partner, and it was upon VMware to make sure that we were constantly innovating to
mm,
drive more innovation using these hyperscaler platforms. uh,
mm.
and if we were able to do that, it was upon us, and if we were not able to do that, that's upon us as well. So
That's definitely, and the two things that really resonated is the PDM support. I've seen that do wonders when you work with
when you have
hyperscalers
a really
because
good
almost
PDM, yeah, when you have a really good PDM, it really works.
yeah, yeah, and it's almost like it's they are on your side, but they're employed by the hyperscaler, like in
Correct.
Microsoft Azure, GCP,
Right.
right? So that's really fantastic. And the other thing is the co-op, the competition angle. I talk to so many founders and leaders in the partnership space, and sometimes they're worried about competition from the hyperscalers. And I give them examples of like like VMwares of the world where there is like plenty of competing competitive products out there, but still there is there's lots of incentives internally on the hyperscaler side to drive the right kind of product forward, be it their own or the one that's available via marketplace. Would you say your experience is similar in that regard?
Yeah, I think, it was very clear where we were competing and where we were not. I don't think, as a partnership leader who was sitting in the intersection of the two big companies, it was lost on us what the motivations were, right? And
Mm,
we
mm,
were also very vocal internally about what the motivations were. And as I said, it was upon us as a business to then figure out how do we align, with the market cap that Microsoft has. They're not going to go away anywhere soon. So it was upon us to figure out what are the true innovation levers we apply to make sure that our business growth aligned with what the opportunity that was being presented to us, right? And we had these internal debates many times with our leaders and also with our virtual teams, to make sure that we understood that, this is how the marketplace is going to play out.
mm,
There is this movement towards the cloud, and especially hyperscaler clouds, and that will continue. So how do we want to play in that is a question. It's a rhetorical
mm,
question, but it's a question that every partner needs to ask themselves: is what is the story in the narrative we want to write from a business perspective, and how do we ride this wave so that the cards fall on our side.
mm,
And yes, we are going to compete, and we're going to acknowledge, and we are going to, be very upfront about, hey, this customer, we are going to go in and we are going to sell XYZ.
mm,
And we had those conversations at the, at a very tactical level, with sales teams would come back and say, we are not getting the support that we needed from the Microsoft sales team. Then, in some cases, Jetson would call the sales team and say, okay, this is how we're going to go do this.
mm.
And so
That's fascinating.
we did. I think this, the size of the pie is so big that there's opportunity for all. And the
Yeah,
faster you have that growth mindset, the better you will do in the marketplace. It's kind of
absolutely,
my
absolutely.
perspective on that.
No, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Okay, Niti, continuing on the theme of building products and having competing products with the hyperscalers, in your time with VMware, the focus was on driving revenue and partnerships with Microsoft for both first party and third party software.
That's correct.
Like for our viewers, would you mind sharing what the difference between them is, and with perhaps some examples? That's first part of the question. And second part of the question is, what happens when a third party solution comes in conflict with Microsoft's first party solutions?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that sensitivity? We talked about that a little bit, but maybe perhaps going a little bit in detail.
Yeah, I think the first party, third party chasm is much talked about with Microsoft, right? Because with first party, Microsoft basically sells that as a core part of their offerings, and especially with Azure, with 500 plus and growing services, there's always conflict with the third party's solution as well. And in this case, it's our first party solution for the partner, right?
Mm,
So the way we navigated that was, we did a customer journey map up front. And this was another thing that I did when I joined, is to really understand how the first party solution, which was Azure VMware solution for us, and how that integrated or connected, or how do we even talk to customers about the other use cases, which were basically our the third party for Microsoft and first party for us. And we then went and educated Microsoft sellers on that, and on those solutions, because it had to be a solution sell. So if you sell Azure VMware solution, then Horizon Cloud needs to go, because it's the desktop solution, and
mm,
this is the value proposition. This is the joint value proposition for the customer, right?
mm,
For these solutions together. And because Microsoft sellers are also incentivized for third party solutions through marketplace, or through just the partnership incentives. So we spent some time understanding what those incentives for Microsoft sellers were, and then positioned our third party solutions either via marketplace or otherwise aligned to the incentives that they got benefits from. And then we had to connect the dots similarly on our side as well for the sales incentives that we were providing to our sellers. And contractually, in some cases, we also made sure that Microsoft sellers and our sellers were incentive so that they had parity of incentives on both sides. And I think those are some ways in which you can make sure. So make sure the customer journey and the value for the customer is very clear, and how these first party, third party solutions come together, if they do. If they don't, then be very clear about what the use cases and the problems that we are solving for the customer. And then make sure that you are speaking the language of Microsoft sellers' incentives and your internal sellers' incentives when you go and educate them. Right? Again, it goes back to you have to do the education on both sides.
Got it. Yeah, makes total sense. Okay, Niti, just on the final closing thoughts, I know you've just started your own company. You're on this journey that I've been on for a couple of years now, and would love to work closely together on and sharing any of the learnings that I've had. But for the audience, could you tell them a little bit more about what your new company does, and how where can they reach out to you and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, my interest has always been partnerships, and that's what has been my core craft and competency for last 20 plus years in the industry, especially working with big tech. So as the AI wave continues to grow, and it's becoming a more and more of a reality, I thought that the intersection between this new technology and partnerships is a good intersection for me to spend the next 10, 20 years on. And that kind of led me to form the AI partnerships consultancy. The idea here is that we help um, partners, like VMware, um, like GE, like the partners who work with these big tech companies, to make sure that they are understanding how to work with on the AI side, as these partnerships are going to become a norm, if not
Mm.
the only thing that these big tech partners would want to do with you. And there is that journey from understanding what is being offered, how does your product line play, what does these all these different co-pilots mean, and also being able to do research as the space is finally really evolving really fast. So my clients are asking, hey, can you help us synthesize this information? Can you help us bring our cross-functional teams on board, get the buy-in that we talked about, make sure we can make the business case? Can we go and then do the co-launches with these big tech partners? Can you help us understand the incentive structures and align our sales team? And so I do think that there is an opportunity for
Mm.
people like me who have this experience and can then bring back the industry network and the relationships and bring that back. And in parallel with the doctoral program that I've joined with the University of Cambridge, I have this really great opportunity to do in-depth research on what are the new issues and new emerging trends that we need
Mm.
to tap into, and then convert into a monetizable opportunity from a consultancy advisory analyst perspective. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. I do think that as AI becomes even more mainstream, there will be partnerships, leaders who would be needed to help form those alliances and collaborations. And I would like to be the one that you bring in when you have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I love this space. I'm a huge fan of partnerships and AI myself. So, would love to do some work together. And we're already talking about some of the things, right? So, yeah, well, fantastic. Well, first of all, thanks a lot again for coming on our podcast. It was wonderful to get insights into how these big organizations can affect change. And I loved your framework and systematic thinking. I'm sure like when you bring that thinking to your business also, it's going to be hugely successful. So Nidhi, thank you so much for joining on a podcast again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Runal.